Good morning. It's Monday morning, and today we're going to read from Revelation chapter 11. I think we'll read 1 through 14. Then I was given a measuring rod like a staff, and I was told, "Rise and measure the temple of God and the altar and those who worship there. But do not measure the court outside the temple, leave that out. For it is given over to the nations, and they will trample the holy city for 42 months. And I will grant authority to my 2 witnesses, and they will prophesy for 1,260 days, clothed in sackcloth. These are the 2 olive trees and the 2 lampstands that stand before the Lord of the earth. And if anyone would harm them, fire pours from their mouth and consumes their foes. If anyone would harm them, this is how he is doomed to be killed. They have power to shut the sky that no rain may fall during the days of their prophesying. And they have power over the waters to turn them into blood and to strike the earth with every kind of plague as often as they desire. And when they have finished their testimony, the beast that rises from the bottomless pit will make war on them and conquer them and kill them. And their dead bodies will lie in the street of the great city that symbolically is called Sodom and Egypt, where their Lord was crucified. For 3.5 days, some from the peoples and tribes and languages and nations will gaze at their bodies and refuse to let them be placed in a tomb. And those who dwell on the earth will rejoice over them and make merry and exchange presents, because these 2 prophets had been a torment to those who dwell on the earth. But after 3.5 days, a breath of life from God entered them, and they stood up on their feet, and great fear fell on those who saw them. Then they heard a loud voice from heaven saying to them, "Come up here." And they went up to heaven in a cloud, and their enemies watched them. And at that hour there was a great earthquake, and 1/10 of the city fell. 7,000 people were killed in the earthquake, and the rest were terrified and gave glory to the God of heaven. The second woe is past. Behold, the third woe is soon to come. Boom. Okay, so what do we do with this stuff? Here, John is pulling all kinds of images from the Old Testament and weaving them together and make this mysterious picture, okay? He's given a staff and he's told to measure the temple. There was somebody in the Old Testament who had a staff who measured the temple and measured things, and it was essentially a kind of a form of warning and judgment. I'm measuring you to see if you're living up to the standards that God has proposed for you. And then these 2 witnesses come, and they will prophesy for 1,260 days, or 42 months, or 3.5 years. The same length of time that the nations will trample the temple. So 3.5 years. Now, where does that come from? It comes from Daniel. And Daniel is talking about how the reign of Antiochus Epiphanes would be short, but terrible. And it's going to be 3.5 years, he says. And so the 3.5 gets pulled in here. But these 2 witnesses are the 2 lampstands, and fire pours from their mouth. Now, Elijah was said to preach like fire pouring out of his mouth. And Moses, of course, is the one who turned the river into blood, and all kinds of plagues came. And so these 2 witnesses are Moses and Elijah, the law and the prophets. And they prophesy, and when they're killed by this beast that rises out of the bottomless pit, this secular power that opposes them, kills them, and they lie there for 3.5 days because everyone's rejoicing and having a party because they're dead and they're gone, and no one wants to see them alive again. And then God resurrects them and takes them up to heaven in a cloud. And there's a great earthquake and kills the people. So terrible things happen in this second woe. And what we see here is John's commitment that even though the outer court of the temple is trampled by all these pagans and heathens, the inner court remains sacrosanct, remains intact and sacred. And there you'll have these two witnesses, Moses and Elijah, most likely it refers to. Now, there were two guys in Turkey in some little village. I forget their names. That's not important. But they decided about the middle of the 2nd century, going on to the 3rd century, so around the year 200 somewhere, they decided that, well, they were the two witnesses referred to in Revelation. And they started preaching this stuff, and they got all these people to follow them. Now, those people are called the Montanists. And the Montanists followed Montanus, who was a teacher and who taught that these two guys in this obscure village were really the two witnesses. And the obscure village is where the New Jerusalem would land when it came out of heaven, and all these things. And they got all these people all stirred up with apocalyptic excitement. It's been going on ever since. All you got to do is turn on the TV and you'll see TV preachers trying to stir up apocalyptic excitement. You know, it's almost here, and making everybody afraid. And that is what we do with this book, even though that is not the point of this book at all. You're not supposed to be afraid when you read this. You're supposed to know that Jesus is in control, that the two witnesses are witnessing to Jesus, and that even this monster from the bottomless pit, and we'll get to that in a couple more chapters, this monster that rises up out of the ground cannot conquer Jesus. So hang in there, and no matter what your struggle is, have a great day and don't be afraid. Okay, we will see you tomorrow for more of this stuff.